There's a question about my workshop that came up almost never, but I'm going to answer it anyway because I think it's quite interesting. And that is, how soundproof was this workshop? Let's find out. Hiya folks, welcome back to my very empty and echoey workshop. I figured before I completely move out of here, one little test I've always been wanting to try out is to work out how soundproof this workshop really was. I always designed it with soundproofing in mind, but I figured I would show you just a quick kind of test of how soundproof it ended up being. The things that I've done to kind of soundproof this workshop, it's not like properly soundproofed it, but I have always had it in the design when I put this together, is that obviously I don't want to be disturbing neighbours, and also if I'm filming I don't want a lot of noise from outside getting in while I'm filming. So it kind of works both ways. I would certainly say if you are setting up any sort of garage workshop, the last thing you want to do is be disturbing your neighbours, so you do need to take these sort of things quite seriously. And plus, as an added benefit, the more soundproof your workshop is, it's probably going to be better heat insulated as well. So all I'm going to do, most of my big tools are all obviously packed up and put away now, but this vacuum is quite noisy. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to set up my little Zoom recorder and I'm going to set it at a fixed volume level recording this, and I'm going to get it to kind of a maximum level. And then what I'm going to do is I'm not going to adjust that level at all, and I'll show you how loud this is in the workshop from directly outside the workshop door and from directly outside the garage door. And once I've done that, I'll tell you about what I've done to try and soundproof this workshop and some of the design considerations that I kind of took into account when I put this all together. So that's a very rough and ready example of how much sound is leaking out of my garage door. And the garage door in a garage is by far the biggest problem you're going to have with noise, because an untreated big aluminium or steel, I don't know what it's made of, steel probably, garage door, it can act like a great big amplifier, because the vibrations of the air inside the workshop can almost get amplified through the garage door, and sometimes as a result it can end up being louder outside with the door shut than with the door open. I'm sure if you've got experience of having a garage workshop, you might have found that. It depends on the sort of work you're doing, because different frequencies kind of reflect around rooms in different ways. By the way, well, I'm not trained in any way in acoustics or anything, but I was originally trained as a studio engineer, so I do have a bit of a background in sound isolation and things like that, but I'm not an expert in it by any stretch of the imagination, but I have studied it to a degree. So, to cut a long story short, if you want to sound isolate a room, if you want to soundproof a room, density is your friend. The higher density thing that you can encase your room in, the better. So concrete rooms work really well. It's part of the reason for why swimming pools are really echoey inside, because ceramic tiles are very dense and they tend to reflect sound back into the room. They don't absorb sound very well. They don't let a lot of sound through. So there's your first tip. If you want to make a wall relatively soundproof for relatively little money. Tiling it can work fairly well, but there is more to it than that. And to be fair, there's probably much easier ways. Obviously, you can buy sound deadening panels, but our old friend MDF is pretty dense. And this is why all I've got on this garage door to block this garage door up, and this is a temporary thing, you know, I could remove all of this in probably under an hour. It's only, a handful of screws holding this in. But it is basically just a single layer of 18mm MDF between us inside here and the outside. You've obviously got the garage door itself, but that's dead thin. That offers, as I say, minimal sound insulation through a garage door, and sometimes it can actually amplify the sound. And we've got a little bit of thermal insulation behind here as well. That does very little for soundproofing other than absorbing the high frequencies. It'll do nigh on nothing to absorb low frequencies, but every little bit helps. The insulation behind here is more for heat insulation than anything else. As I say, the main thing providing the sound insulation here is a single layer of 18mm MDF. Another important thing to cover off as well is that sound transmits through solid surfaces very well. So if one solid surface is making a noise and it's touching another solid surface, then that noise will transmit into that other surface. So that's why you get these kind of room within a room designs where you have an air gap between your inner room and your outer room. So if you are blocking up a garage door, don't let your inner wall touch the garage door itself. You need to have a bit of an air gap. I've probably got, a 3-inch air gap or thereabouts. Let's go metric. I've probably got about 100mm air gap between the MDF and the garage door. But as I say, you just don't want this wall to be touching the garage door, basically. And then the other thing, and a lot of people asked about this, why did I make a custom door for the workshop? And the main reason was for sound isolation, because it's difficult to buy. You can buy like really dense fire doors and stuff, but they're quite expensive. This is obviously a bespoke size as well. So it was easier to just make a custom door. Again, this is made out of 2 layers of 12mm MDF with an air gap in between. If you wanted to go really overboard, you could fill that air gap with concrete or something. It would make it very heavy. You'd need to uprate your hinges to handle the weight, but that would make it even more soundproof. But as you can see, not a huge amount of sound is getting out of this door. It's doing its job pretty well. That's why I made a custom door for here. And if you want to know what happened to the sticker door, you're going to have to sign up to my Patreon, I'm afraid. In terms of other stuff, obviously I've put a ceiling in. I'm not going to talk about the ceiling. It's just 12mm plasterboard. Plasterboard is your friend. Plasterboard's pretty dense and works very well as a sound isolator. Ideally, if you're putting it up on walls, you can go for multiple layers of plasterboard, and you can use special acoustic glue between the layers to avoid the transmission of sound through the layers of plasterboard. There's a whole raft of things you can do in terms of isolating your inner wall from your outer wall using resilient strips, and it depends how far you want to take it. I haven't bothered with any of that for this, and it's soundproof enough. This wall here, on the other side of this plywood, this is just 18mm ply, and it's just single skin, single leaf brick, so 100mm brick basically on the other side of here. And I didn't actually show you how loud it was on the other side of here. Let me just show you that quickly. As you can see, you pretty much can't hear the vacuum at all on the other side of this wall. And that's pretty much because it's a brick wall. All we've got here is 18mm ply, we've got a little bit of polystyrene insulation, and then we've got the 100mm single leaf brick wall, and brick works really well. You know, if you've got the option to build a brick and block workshop, that's probably going to be one of the most soundproof ways of doing things. If you can do brick on the outside, cavity, block. As I say, no cavity here, single leaf brick, and you pretty much can't hear a thing through the brick walls. So this ply is purely for practical reasons to make it easier to attach things onto the walls. And as I've briefly mentioned in other videos, I deliberately kept all of my wiring, all my electric cables were kept on the surface of this, not embedded in the wall. And it just means then, if I'm screwing things into the wall, I know I'm never going to run the risk of hitting an electric cable. So hence, when I had all the electrics in here, they were all on the surface of the ply. But as I say, the ply was just for practical reasons, and I think it looks quite nice as well. Obviously, the floor is concrete. Concrete is your friend, very dense. If you've got anything other than a concrete floor, you probably are going to have to consider some soundproofing of some description with your floor, because if you've got a wooden floor, it's going to transmit sound very easily, and it'll certainly transmit the sound from the floor into the walls, and then that can get passed to the outside. But concrete floors are awesome for soundproofing. So the only other wall that I haven't really touched about is the wall over on that side of the workshop. And this wall here, again, of course, we're in the territory of MDF, if you've already watched the videos of when I built this workshop. MDF, again, for soundproofing, but it's also to give me a nice, easy material to attach things onto. I could have gone for a plasterboard wall, but that would have been a pain for attaching heavy things onto. I could have gone for plywood, but it would have been more expensive and not as easy to paint. I wanted this wall to be white, so it just made sense to make this wall out of MDF. I've got 12mm MDF on this side. I've got 18mm MDF on the other side. So that is, a foot thick. And then on the other side of that, we've got obviously the rest of the garage, and then we've got another single leaf brick wall. So I don't really need to, it's way overkill, the amount of soundproofing I've got on this wall. But bearing in mind that on the other side of here, I do have a functional garage door, so I do need to think about how much sound is going to get through this wall and then out of the garage door. So that was kind of my main reasoning behind making this fairly soundproof. And there is insulation inside this as well, again, mainly for heat insulation rather than for sound. The main side of the sound insulation is the 30mm of MDF that I've used, between the 12mm on this side and 18mm on the other side. So there you go, folks. I hope you found that vaguely useful. Remember, as mentioned a few times now, I was always cut out to be a farmer in another life. And if you want to join me for some pretend virtual farming, you can do so over on my Andy Mac Drums channel. If you think I'm absolutely mental for playing pretend farming games, go and watch it for yourself and have a play at the farming simulator and see how ridiculously addictive it is. I just find it's a switch off. You know, sometimes if you've had a busy day and you need to switch your mind off before going to bed, I find it just works brilliantly. And I do apologise to the many people watching this channel who are now getting into Farming Simulator. And this isn't sponsored or anything, by the way. It's just I enjoy playing the game, and I thought I would share my love of the game with you lovely people. And yeah, I do apologise to everyone who I've got into the game who are now equally addicted to it. Anyway, as per usual, folks, take care, and I shall see you next time. Tatty bye.